Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. So glad everybody could join us this evening. Kevin Midgette is on assignment, so I call my number one pinch hitter. He's got his Phillies hat on. Maybe he was down there watching some spring training or something, but Javon Alford gladly jumping in, and I appreciate him joining the show this evening. Lots to get to around the NFL. It's a free agent frenzy, Javon. I mean, the league year does not start until Wednesday, March 11th, but with this whole legal tampering thing, I guess they wanted to stop agents and GMs being in driveways of people and getting backdoor deals done. It's crazy. I think by Wednesday, March 11th, they'll just be like dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But what do you think of this early free agent frenzy, and who do you think is winning so far?
Yeah, well, first and always, Lloyd, appreciate you for having me on. Like you said, legal tampering is free to see at this point. The NFL, it's just another money maker, another television special that they can put on ESPN and NFL Network. But in terms of teams that I think that have done well so far today, I've been pleased with what I've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers do today. I like the addition of Rico Dowdle at running back. Obviously, they lost Kenneth Gainwell, who got I think 2 years, 14 million from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought getting Dowdle there to probably, I guess, be their RB1 or at least be in that running back by committee system with Jalen Warren. He's being reunited with Mike McCarthy, who's now obviously the head coach in Dallas. So I like what they're doing there, and obviously them making the trade for Michael Pittman. I don't think none of us saw that come in at all. Like I don't, or even like number one, I don't think nobody saw that coming because it seemed like everything was just pointing to okay, the Colts are going to continue to develop this wide receiver core of Pierce, Pittman, Downs. Like those are the three guys. Like these are the guys that we, are leaning on and dependent on. So to see the Steelers get Pittman, I thought that was a solid move. You pair him with DK Metcalf. Finally, the Steelers have two good wide receivers that whoever's throwing them the ball can uh can do something with. So I would say the Steelers first and foremost, stood out to me as a team just off the top of my head that, what their moves today, outside of just the pass rushers just getting paid big bucks.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you said, the Steelers trying to catch the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about them in a minute, and they made the big splash, obviously, right before free agency started, but the trade for Max Crosby. But I do like what the Steelers have done in terms of Pittman, now DK Metcalf. They cleared some space. Uh, Fryermuth's going to be their tight end pretty much. They got rid of John Smith. Um, and then they have Cole Holcomb that to re-sign 2 years, $5 million value deal there. Jamel Dean, I thought they needed another corner. They brought him
Yep.
in, 3-year deal, 36.75 million. He comes over, solid player. I think he'll fit in their scheme with Joey Porter Jr. there. Asante Samuel Jr., who they brought over right before the playoffs. They bring him back on a 1-year, $4 million deal. And Rico Dowdle, he fits what they do.
Hmm.
They want their backs to have a little wiggle, can run between the tackles. He has pretty good hands enough to catch the screen
Yep.
passes. Now, obviously, Gainwell did a great job in terms of passing game last
Hmm.
year. He was just a PPR merchant, and it's going to
Yes.
be interesting. How do they replace him? But Jalen Warren, I think Dowdle will be a good combination there. You said an operative thing, quarterback. What is going on to Aaron Rodgers? He will be 43 in December, Javon. And I just think he's done in terms of football. He just has not announced it. You know him. He's going to wait to the
Hmm.
last second. Should the Steelers play that game with him again, or should they move on? And quite frankly, when I watched that playoff game, I thought they should move on because even though his stats are pretty good in the regular season, he just couldn't get done when the playoffs lights were on.
Yeah, no. If I'm the Steelers, and I know some Steelers fans, they're ready for the Aaron Rodgers experience to be over. And if you're a Steelers fan, I think that's what you should look forward to the future because Rodgers took that team. I think as far as that ceiling was going to take that team, and I think for them moving forward in this Mike McCarthy era, while it would be, I'm guess, nice for the vibes, for McCarthy and Rodgers getting back together again just like the old days in Green Bay. You gotta look ahead to the future now. What what is that future, right? We look at the current quarterback situation in terms of free agency. It's not a lot of appealing options. We already seen, a couple of backup quarterbacks get nice, solid 1 year, $8 million deals out there. So what do the Steelers do? Do they go after a guy like Kyler Murray, for example?
Right.
Do they entertain the idea of a Geno Smith, which could be interesting on, maybe a 1 year deal, and or do you look for the trade market? We've seen Tyson Bagent name come up in the trade rumors, Tanner McKee, like those type of guys. Like there's not really, or even Anthony Richardson. I forgot about him. Like, or do you entertain that idea of trying to make a trade for Anthony Richardson?
And if I'm a Steelers fan, none of those guys are getting me excited. They might as well bring Justin Fields back, in my opinion, when you start
I,
talking about some of those
I'm
quarterbacks.
I'm not I'm not opposed to that. I would love it.
And the thing is, Javon, I think a lot of teams, and they're not going to say it, maybe a wink, wink, and I see the Sixers sign behind you. You know, trust the process. They may be planning for 2027 draft and trying to
hmm
position themselves, especially in terms of these quarterbacks. You have Arch Manning coming out of Texas,
Yep.
more than likely. Trinidad Chambliss, who played so well for Ole Miss, he's back at school. Dante Moore with Oregon.
hmm
Uh, Julian Sayin from Ohio State. And then that's just the quarterbacks. The receivers, you got Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State, Ryan Williams, Alabama. These are all front line guys, and I could go on and on. There's the edge rushers are deep, the tackles are deep, corners, D tackles. I mean, next season's draft is going to be tremendous, and we'll see how it turns out after college football season. But do you think teams would literally try to tank or position themselves? I mean, what do you think in terms of planning for the upcoming season? I know everything in the NFL is win now, but do you think some of them are saying, all right, let's take the hinky mode?
It's so hard to do in football because it's so hard to tank in football, like because you're literally playing at like 100 miles per hour. But I think it starts at quarterback and what you do. Like, are you going for that bridge guy, right? I think I saw a report over the weekend where it was like the Jets are like interested in like Carson Wentz and Geno Smith, and I forgot who was the other quarterback, but it was those two names that stuck out, and it was just like, okay, like you guys are legitimately saying we are tanking, but not tanking, and we just need a guy to get us through like 16 to get us through the 17-week season, and we'll see what 18 week, 7 week, 17-week schedule, and we'll like see what happens there. So I think a lot of these teams are going to try to play that game and kind of see like, okay, if we can just get someone that looks like some semi respectable on the field, then like we can like sneak out maybe 3 to 4 or 5 wins, and just look competitive. Like the goal will be just to look competitive and not look like you not like blatantly throwing games.
Yeah,
But
like the 2008 Browns. I mean,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Lions, or what was it?
the line,
The
yeah, the Lions, right? They
Lions
won.
in 2008, and then I think the Browns was it 2016 or somewhere around there
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they didn't win a game, and it's just like, man, the fans got bags on. I don't think it'll get that bad because teams just fall into wins. I mean, you look at Tennessee last year, and they found ways to win a couple games. Particularly the Cardinals handed them that one. I still
hmm
remember that busted my Survivor pull up,
Oh
you
man.
know, and it's just like they're going to find a way to win. So I don't think they'll go winless. But yeah, I think some of these teams are definitely positioning themselves. A team that is definitely winning now mode, trying to position themselves for success going into the playoffs, is the Ravens. You talked
hmm
about them a little bit. That Max Crosby, they made the big deal. Steve Bisciotti, the owner with the Ravens, Eric DeCosta, they decided they needed to get this done. That defense wasn't stopping anybody last year. They traded Oweh over to the Chargers, and then they really had no pass rush. And Hamilton really was their only playmaker on defense. They trade for Crosby. Is it too much, though? They first round picks in 2026 and 2027. The one coming going from the Ravens to the Raiders is a number 14 overall this season. So
Yeah.
I think Crosby, he's a difference maker at 10 sacks last season. Putting him in there, does that immediately fix that defense? I think Anthony Weaver's coming over to be their defensive coordinator. Is
hmm
that going to help him out? I mean, talk a little bit about Crosby and the impact it's going to do for the Ravens.
I obviously, like you said, they needed pass rushers bad, right? And seeing them part ways with Owe, and then you see Owe blow up with the Chargers, or just like the ultimate, just like what did we do? And then he goes and gets paid today by the
Mhm.
Commanders. So, and obviously they tried to get some more pass rusher, Draymond Jones last this past season, but it didn't work. So getting a guy like Crosby should help, right? That should kind of reignite things. A guy that you have to double team for, that you have to kind of game plan on. And hopefully that helps everybody else on the line. Hopefully that helps your defensive tackles. Obviously, Mike Green coming into his second year out of
Yeah.
Marshall. You like the move. It's a splashy move, and I think it's a move that I think will kind of solidify and more so jumpstart the Jesse Minter era. Because when we think of Jesse Minter, we think of him as a defensive guy. What he was able to do in with the Chargers, not only from like a secondary and linebacker standpoint, but what he was able to do out of the defensive line, how he was able to get production. This past season with Owe, and then obviously with Khalil Mack, these last couple of years in the Chargers. So if you think he can do that with them, like what can he imagine with him and like you said, Anthony Weaver, can do with Crosby. I still think that the Ravens do need another pass rusher. I would like to see them
Right.
get somebody else. I don't know, maybe a Bradley Chubb on the other side
Okay.
with the connection, obviously, with Anthony Weaver being in Miami. Maybe that is something that would give them a little bit more of a boost because that secondary, it has promise, right? Like you said, you got Kyle Hamilton, you have you still got Humphrey, you still got Nate Wiggins there. Like you got some talent. Even in your
Yeah.
linebacker core, you got talent. The problem was they ain't getting pressured. And when you don't get pressured, you have games where your secondary gets picked apart. And I think the Ravens were. They were top five in like passing yards allowed or something like that.
Yes.
Like they gave it up. And when you don't get pressure, you leave your corners on the island. Just ask the Cowboys. They gave up the most. You leave your corners on the island, they get picked on. So getting Crosby, granted, 2 first round picks is a hefty price given that the Ravens at 14, they could have got an impact player there. Maybe you get another cornerback since it's a very strong cornerback class in the first round, or maybe you get another pass rusher there. But hey, you push in all your chips. They go get this guy. He's under contract. You got to make this move because your window of competing in the AFC isn't as wide open, I think, as it once was.
Yes. And when you look at that AFC North, I always look divisionally first. I'd have to say they're in good shape, because we talk about the Steelers in
Hmm.
terms of their problems at the quarterback position. The Browns are the Browns. They got a new head coach. We'll see what Todd Monken's able to do there, but he's going to have to make water out of wine, wine out of water there, and we're going to see how that goes. And the Bengals, they have Joe Burrow, but that defense needs a lot. So
Hmm.
looking at what the Ravens have done, kind of positioning themselves, I think offensive line, obviously, they're going to have to look at
Yes.
Tyler Linderbaum, who we'll talk about in a minute. He goes from the Ravens to the Raiders, and so that leaves a hole in our offensive line. They did sign Stoop Huntley, their backup, to a 2-year, $11 million deal. He's able to step in the last couple of years, help out when Lamar Jackson's gotten banged up, and with him being dual threat, there's going to be a couple of games where they need Huntley to step
Yep.
in there. John Simpson, who was serviceable for him on the offensive line. They bring him back on a 3-year, $30 million deal. And these are just some of the little moves that DaCosta is doing. He's learned from Ozzie Newsome, trying to build this roster mainly through the draft. Key trades here and there, but I think they're definitely positioning themselves well. And let's face it, this is Lamar Jackson's prime. He needs some
Yep.
help. I think in the draft, when you start mocking them and looking what they're going to do, obviously their mindset's going to change not having a first rounder. But I think they got to get a receiver.
Yes.
They got to get another tight end because likely
Lost
um,
both tight ends today. Him and
lost.
Kohler.
Yeah, so Kohler, they're blocking tight end. He's gone. Likely is gone. I'm not sure who paid for Likely. I'm trying to.
The Giants. I
All
think it
right,
was
so
like 3 years, 40. I think
yeah.
something along
So
those
the
lines.
Giants fans are very excited about there. We know Rich Q somewhere probably smiling. Jackson Dart has another weapon. But yeah, I think they did sign Mark Andrews, but he's getting a little long in the tooth. They gave him that extension, and you're like, maybe they extended the wrong tight end. We'll see there. But the Ravens are trying to build. They had that kind of collapse at the end of the season. But with the Steelers and the Rodgers situation up in the air, I think they're well positioned. So they've done a nice job And speaking of the Raiders, I mean, the Raiders have opened up the purse strings. I think it's the influence of Tom Brady being a
Hmm.
minority owner with this team. John Spytek came from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's really brought that aggressive mentality to this team, trying to change the culture there. Mark Davis is that okay? Keys to the kingdom, you two, Spytek and Brady, and they brought in Clint Kubiak as an offensive mind. They're going to get Fernando Mendoza, number one overall pick. But talk a little bit about Tyler Linderbaum coming over from the Ravens. Uh, NFL interior lineman record, 3 years, $81 million deal.
That's it's huge. It's huge, and I think Clint Kubiak, coming from where he came from in Seattle, he knows the what was the success for that team these past couple years was in the trenches, and what got them to make this deep playoff run and win the Super Bowl in the trenches, which means offensive line, and what are you able to do what are you able to do on the defensive line, but also on the defense in total. When you get a guy in Linderbaum, who I think is what, only 25 years old, like still very young, a guy that a lot of people thought was going to reset the market at center. Like there was going to be this groundswell of like, this team is going to get them. The Bears are,
Right.
sniffing around, like all these teams sniffing around. And the Raiders, like you said, this is also the privilege of when you have so much cap space, you can make these big moves, but you have to do it the right way with the amount of cap space that you have. So I think them getting Linderbaum, I think it's perfect. He's been outstanding, in his time in Baltimore. I think he's going to help that young quarterback in Mendoza and kind of like help settle him in. And then just defensively, I thought what the Rangers did defensively was amazing too. I think they spent correctly at the spots that he needed to spend to, and offensively, I like Linderbaum. I think you just got to keep on building around. Obviously, Mendoza. Maybe you get another wide receiver there. I think they got Naylor from Minnesota on a 3-year deal, which was interesting because I think there was a lot of people in the coming days saying that Naylor is getting all this interest in free agency. It could be like off the board very quickly. But I think starting with Linderbaum, it starts in the trenches. You got to win up front. And for if you want Mendoza to be successful, and if you want Ashton Genty to be successful, because that's also going to have to play a part in Mendoza's
Yeah.
success. You have to be able to run the football. You have to be able to protect the quarterback, and getting Linderbaum there. Obviously, you still have Colton Miller on that line. Raiders should be okay on offense. Clint Kubiak might be the guy that I think that can get this ship turned on the right way.
Yeah, and then they definitely have seen, the Denver turn that thing around in their division. They're looking at them. The Chiefs, we'll
Hmm.
talk about them in a minute. They're gearing back up, and then obviously they have Patrick Mahomes. But I do like Naylor coming over. He's somebody to compare with Brock Bowers and
Yep.
finally give them a piece. It just seems like there's just been a hole as a playmaker in terms of their offense for some time now. Linderbaum going to make all the calls on the line. Do they bring in a bridge quarterback, or do you agree with starting Mendoza right away? I mean, where do you fall on that?
It's tough. It's tough. I'm in the market of I'm I would bring in a bridge. I would bring in a vet, you know, just to push him a little bit. Granted, he's the number one overall pick, and I know there's a lot of hype, around him. But we also seen, for every success that we've seen with guys that go number one overall, and they play well, like we've seen Cam Moore take his strides and get better. There's also other instances where guys get thrown to the fire and it doesn't, work out well. So I'm not opposed to them adding a vet. I think Aiden O'Connell is still on the roster, so maybe that's not the worst idea or thing to have around them. But I think Raiders fans will probably want to see Mendoza from day one, and I don't blame them because they went through Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett, and everything else this past season. So I think they want to see Mendoza, and hopefully it works out for him. Because they kind of need something, and hopefully, and I think help him having an offensive minded head coach. I also think will help him in that transition because I think we seen from what we saw what Kubiak was able to do this season with Sam Darnold, I think could be very relatable and transferable to Mendoza and just simplifying the game for him, leaning on that ground game, using the weapons around you to make plays and not so much putting everything on the quarterback's shoulder to kind of win the game.
Yeah, some great insight there by Javon Alford. He's joining me this evening on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. 1029 The Game. So we're excited everybody can be with us this evening. Free agent frenzy around the National Football League. We were just talking about the Raiders. They also, Teron Johnson, Nate was like, you can have him. Nate, our resident Bills analyst, Teron Johnson, he said that it was time for him to leave, and the Raiders got him cheap. Before free agency started, they traded him for a 2026 seventh round draft pick. So they bring him in. Eric Stokes re-signed with them, another cornerback, 3 years, $30 million, $20 million guaranteed. He's a nice player to put in that defense, and as you said, nowhere to go but up for them. But they do have some nice young pieces in Brock Bowers, Genty, now Linderbaum, and they're going to have Mendoza coming in. So maybe the needle's pointing up for the Las Vegas Raiders. They play indoors on that fast track, and Clint Kubiak, as you said, he will be spreading that football around. I expect all their stats to go up this season, but you don't want him to get Mendoza to get beat up too bad. I
No.
know Ward was the most sacked quarterback last season out of Tennessee. He took his lumps, and to his credit, he finished the season. He had some strong performances at the end. Obviously, they probably wouldn't want to win more games, but he did his job in terms of controlling the scheme, offensive line, and I think Linderbaum will help him in terms of protection. So the Raiders, they're an interesting squad right there in their own division, though, and had to get your take on this. You had the Kansas City Chiefs, and Nate says I'm a closet Chiefs fan because I express my Mahomes love. That's my guy. Rich teased me all season saying he's done. The Chiefs are done. I didn't want to give in, but you know what? He was right, and they're trying to rebuild. Kenneth Walker the third. They bring him over, Super Bowl MVP, 3 year deal, $45 million, 28.7 million guaranteed. Seahawks, they knew they couldn't bring him back.
Hmm.
So they Andy Reid adds him. You know, following the Eagles as long as you did. Andy Reid loves the screen game, so Kenneth
Yes.
Walker has pretty good hands. They'll be able to run him between the tackles, and it's going to take that pressure off Mahomes coming off that ACL injury. And he was a leading rusher too many times for his team
Yeah.
last season. Isaiah Pacheco just was not getting it done. So talking about the impact of Walker and where we see the Chiefs going to do going forward.
Yeah, no, I think we all knew that the Chiefs were going to make a splash at running back or fix running back. We just didn't know if it was going to happen in free agency or the draft with Jeremiah Love. And I think they obviously X out that
Yeah.
plan by getting Kenneth Walker. And it's funny because I think a lot of people thought it could have been Travis Etienne because all the reports starting off was it was going to be Etienne. But with a guy like Kenneth Walker, I think what's going to help them, like you said, the screen game, which Andy Reid loves to use. I wish the Eagles would bring back the screen game, but that's neither here nor there. But with Walker, I think you're going to get more explosive runs out of, and I think that's what the Chiefs' backfield was obviously lacking. Like you said, last season, like you said, Patrick Mahomes was the leading rusher. Like that's unsustainable. Like and Patrick Mahomes is not a mobile quarterback. Be different. We're talking like Lamar Jackson, right?
Right.
Or Jalen Hurts, as you know, or Josh Allen, right? Guys that use their legs a lot more than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, you're not dialing up design runs. He's getting a leading rusher because the guys aren't getting open, and obviously the running game's not
He was
working.
running for his life, man, a couple of
Exactly,
times there.
exactly. The offensive line wasn't spectacular either, and we saw what the Chiefs did too by getting rid of Jawan Taylor before legal tampering. So I think Kenneth Walker, like you said, I'd say he's going to bring some more explosive runs to the table. I think he had 33, I think, explosive runs this
Yeah.
season, which that's pretty good. I think it was like in the top 10. So Chiefs offense is going to get more explosive. Obviously, what he's like as a pass catcher. Eric Bieniemy is back as the OC. DeMarco Murray is the running back coach over there. I'm really excited to see what they can now do with Brashard Smith now paired with DeMarco Murray. Because with Kenneth Walker, because you got to think that the Chiefs probably want to put Brashard Smith in that RB2 role now without Pacheco and
Yeah.
obviously
Well,
without
he's
Kareem
second
Hunt
year,
there.
definitely.
Yeah, second year. You know, they paid Kenneth Walker to be RB1, but we know Kenneth Walker, he shared snaps with Zach Charbonnet. So I think we could see I think this could also be very good news, for Brashard Smith. So I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you're excited. You got the running back position knocked out. Now it's how can we fill out the rest of this offense? We know Travis Kelsey's coming back. Big surprise. Everybody knew that was happening. But what are you going to do at wide receiver now? Are you bringing back Hollywood Brown? Maybe, maybe not. Tyquan Thornton could be a very high price free agent going somewhere, depending on how the rest of this wide receiver market kind of shapes out. So if you lose those two guys, how do you replace them? Do you replace them, with Darnell Mooney, for example? Like, how do you go and replace
Yeah.
those guys? Because Thornton gave them speed that not only that they were getting from Xavier Worthy, but his size. He's bigger than Worthy. So you hit guy having guy that what 6'1", 6'2", running 4.28, and we saw
Mm.
Mahomes put that ball out there a couple of times. So they got to figure out
Yeah.
what they're doing there. Offensive line wise, like we said, Jawan Taylor is out of there. So we'll see. The offensive line should be some stability, and defensively, I think for the Chiefs, I think that's for the next thing. What are you going to do defensive wise? You got to figure out that secondary because you lost Brian Cook. You lost both of your starting cornerbacks. You traded one of them to Trent McDuffie to the Rams, and
Right.
Jalen Watson also is joining him in the Rams. So you got to figure out that situation there. But getting your running back position squared away, I think, is a very good first step. And then now, as the market constantly starts to kind of figure itself out, they should be able to piecemeal and get some wide receiver help there. Get some more DBs because they're going to have to now kind of piecemeal this together because the Broncos aren't going anywhere. The Chargers ain't going anywhere. And we saw, like we said, we just talked about the Raiders. They added not only pieces of offense, but a lot of great talent on defense with Quay Walker and N'Kobe Dean.
Yeah, and this division's getting a lot tighter. You may see three teams again come out of this division into the playoffs, and we'll see how it turns out. But yes, getting Kelsey back, they have Creed Humphrey, and they have Smith in the middle of that offensive line to help fix things. They're going to have to find another right tackle or somebody to solidify that position.
Yeah.
I was surprised they kept putting Jawan Taylor out there every single week. That must be because they missed on the couple years ago on their first rounder. He was more of a backup. I think he's from Oregon State or something like that, a big tackle, and he just did not get it done for them. And so Andy Reid, though, he'll figure it out, him and Spagnuolo, and in terms of the defense, but the offense, Brett Veach is probably going to have to get involved and see who's there after this frenzy, like those second tier guys.
Hmm.
And that's what really helped the Patriots in terms of their Super Bowl run last year. They got Milton Williams, who was a frontline guy, but then they got the Robert Spillane, they got a Matt
Yep.
Collins, they got those types of players to fill in the roster, and they gelled quickly and they turned that thing around. So in terms of the Chiefs, last question, Rashee Rice, what are you hearing in terms of him? I think he's got some difficulty coming again legally. I think he's probably going to get a 4-game suspension.
Yeah, I wouldn't, man. Like you said, I haven't obviously haven't seen anything else about his situation. But like you said, based off of what's been out there, right, we have to think that there's probably going to be another suspension on the way. And if you're the Chiefs, you have to start prepping for that possibility, which means again putting emphasis on getting more wide receiver help. I forgot Juju Smith-Schuster's also a free agent, so they're going to have to go really hard to address the wide receiver
Right.
position. And they're also going to have to put faith in their young kids, right? Meaning Jalen Royals. This was a guy that Chiefs fans were
Hmm.
excited about, coming out of the draft last year out of Utah State and what he could do. And he just, for some reason, could not get on the field and actually get snaps. So if Rasheed Rice goes out again with suspension, their Chiefs are going to have to obviously depend on Xavier Worthy, but Jalen Royals is going to have to get more, and then whoever you bring back in free agency or whoever you add, they're going to have to step up because it can't be put everything on Patrick Mahomes' shoulder coming off of a knee injury at that. Like this Chiefs
Yeah.
offense is going to have to be very meticulous and very smart with how they play. And having, again, this where I think having Kenneth Walker helps because you do have a guy that's a legit option, not only in the running game, but also in the passing game, which they didn't really have in Pacheco. And then in Kareem Hunt, he was okay, but Kareem Hunt's up there. He wasn't going to send him out there catching screen passes 5 times a game. Like he's not making nobody miss. So having
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker, I think, will help. limit whatever blow that comes with Rasheed Rice missing time.
Yeah, you said Bieniemy's coming back, and it's interesting. I was on another show, and they started asking. There's a 32-year-old receiver out there. He's coming off a major injury, former Chief Tariq Hill. Is there any chance that he's coming back with the Chiefs? And how much does he have left at this stage in his career? I think he had back-to-back seasons where he didn't even get 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I don't think that Hill's coming back. I think they asked Andy about this, I think a few weeks ago, and he kind of basically said, like, we're cool. Like, essentially, like, we know he's out there, but like, we're okay with what we have right now. And in terms of Hill, the injury that he's coming off of. Like, that's rough. Like, what, the dislocated knee and something tore in his leg. Like, it's a
Yeah,
bad
maybe.
situation for a guy that's not known for his route running, but more for his speed. Like, how much of that will evaporate that game breaking speed? I think somebody will give him an opportunity, but I don't know if you're the Chiefs, if you want to go down that road. I would, if I'm the Chiefs, the only way I'm going down that road, if I've exhausted every option in free agency and I don't like what I have in training camp, and I say, okay, let's bring him back, on a 1 year prove it type deal, see what he has left in the tank. But that would be after I exhausted everything. Guys that I drafted or signed, and Jalen Royals, if he doesn't do what I need him to do, okay, now we can go down that path of bringing Tyreek Hill back.
Yeah, and Javon, I think it's going to be a make good deal for Tariq Hill. I think somebody maybe gives him a 1 year deal, brings him to camp, takes a look at him. At this stage in his career, maybe he comes in as a receiver three, deep
Hmm.
threat, two, maybe on a team that's playing indoors where, he has that fast track. But you got to see, as you said, devastating injury, how he comes back from that. I know he's been talking all positive and everything, and he was glad to get out of Miami, but. We'll see. And at this stage in his career, he's just not the same guy. That's what I was
Yeah.
telling the other show I was on. So, speaking of receivers here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 Game Coast Sports Digital Network, we're here with Javon Alford. Give him a follow on. You're on X. On what's
Yes.
your hand on X?
Jovan 10. So
All
first
right.
name and 1-0.
All right, find him on X, Javon10. He has a lot of other content out there on the interweb, and we're always glad to get him on. Kevin obviously was not able to join us this week. Always glad when Javon could jump in. Fountain of knowledge. Speaking of receivers, Javon, and this was a feeding frenzy, but the Colts, they decided to bring their man back. And this is interesting. You have Alec Pierce. They re-signed him 4 years, $114 million contract, max value of $116 million, includes $84 million guaranteed. He had his first 1,000-yard season. Everybody talks about he gets deep. He had 20 yards per catch. They drafted him out of Cincinnati. They decided to keep their guy, as we talked about earlier. They sent Pittman to the Steelers. Is this the right call, or is Alec Pierce, is he a Kevin Curtis type? I don't know if you remember Kevin Curtis, the
I do.
Eagles.
Yep.
They signed him, and everybody was all excited. And he had a little highlights here and there, but is Alec Pierce a difference maker, and is he worth all that money?
Difference maker, you could say, just because the Colts lack that game breaking speed, and in the NFL, if you have a guy that's fast and that can take the top off defense and also catch, that's a great weapon to have. Because I feel almost like the deep threat in the NFL is kind of like gone away a little bit. Like, the age of like Deshaun Jackson and those guys were very prevalent, where it was like you need those guys, and now in
Yeah, they
this,
had a
like,
lot of time. They had a lot of
yeah,
time to sit back there, and you got these pass rushers. I mean, you know, Garrett, and,
that
and
are
we talk
fast as
about
wide
Crosby.
receivers.
Exactly, and they're getting off the edge. They're not having that 7 step drop time to throw that 9 route, all the way down the field. But
No.
getting back to Pierce. Yeah. So yeah, what are you thinking in terms of him
That
and deep threat, and
it was
how are they
that
going to use him?
that was expensive. I mean, if you paying him 114 million, you're expecting him to be more than a deep threat at this point. Like, especially with no Michael Pittman now. Like, there's no more Pittman as that safety valve blanket, big body target. On the outside, obviously we know they do have Tyler Warren, so you got to think Tyler Warren's target share will go up a little bit and increase. Josh Downs will increase a little bit, but at 114 million, you're paying Alec Pierce now to be more than a deep threat. Like he needs to probably average 8 to 10 targets a game, like because he's getting paid top, he's getting paid top dollar. And I think if your other wide receivers looking at this deal, I think you gotta be happy. Like with George Pickens, you're saying, hey, I put up more numbers, and I'm a better all around wide receiver than Alec Pierce, and I should be getting paid more. Or if you're Christian Watson, who's back in Green Bay for the 1 year, $13 million extension he got during the season, you got to be looking at that and saying, hey, I do things better than Alec Pierce. So it's a risk. It's a risky move by the Colts because I just felt like their wide receiver core was fine with Pittman and Pierce and Downs because they all complemented each other well. Like everybody knew their role and they did it well. Now without Pittman, you're now almost putting Pierce in that pedestal of being wide receiver one, and I don't
Right.
know if he's that. And you don't even know what's going to happen at quarterback.
Yeah, and we see that a lot with these guys that are, they're it's the Alvin Harper syndrome. I always, that's going way back. But he was a guy, he was a number two, and then Washington paid him like a number one. They expected him to be a number one, and he just never lived up to that. And we'll see if Pierce is able to, you know, make it happen. He's with the same team, but they still have Warren. We'll see if Downs how he works in the system, and then let's not forget they have Jonathan Taylor as
Yeah.
sledgehammer at running back. They'll be able to do play action off of that. But speaking of the Colts, they decided to bring Daniel Jones back on a transition tag, 1 year, 37.8 million. Now he's coming off that Achilles injury. Is he going to be ready in terms of late training camp, or where is he looking in terms of his rehab? And was that the right move? They are obviously talking about getting rid of Anthony Richardson, putting him on the block, but where are they going to? Is it going to be Leonard? What are they going to do at quarterback?
That's the scary thing about it. That's the scary thing about it, Lloyd. Like you gave like you put the tag on him because it's like you want to keep him Daniel Jones, but you don't know what Daniel Jones is going to be post injury. Like we don't know if the Daniel Jones that we saw when they were like 8-1 and 8-2 was the real Daniel Jones, or like was that just an aberration? And what I think he had you like said he had the Achilles, so it's like he could be back in time. But if not, like you said, are you really willing to roll out there with Riley Leonard? And no disrespect, I thought Riley Leonard did fine when called upon, but then there was a reason why the Colts went and got Philip Rivers off the bench, who was coaching high school football. There's a reason why they got him off the bench and said, "Hey, you want to throw a couple passes and start a couple games in the midst of a playoff race?" Like so. The Colts are such an interesting spot because, like you said, with Pierce, you give Jones the transition tag, and I thought maybe that I don't know if that was the smartest thing, just because even if you didn't get him the transition tag, who was going out there to sign him? Like, were you really that scared that the Minnesota Vikings are going to do it?
Right.
The Vikings are in financial trouble as is, hence why they have to get rid of guys and they're cutting guys to try to be almost cap compliant. So outside of the Vikings, I didn't see anybody else that would be a threat to steal Daniel Jones away from him. But to Daniel Jones' credit and representation, he can tell the Colts, I'm the best option you have right now. Like you saw what I did them first 9, 10 games. Like we were looking like the best team in the AFC. I can do that if you bring me back. And look what you have on the bench. You got Riley Leonard and you got a guy in Anthony Richardson who you guys obviously don't like because you brought me in.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with Indy is you have Chris Ballard, the general manager there. You have Shane Steichen, the head coach there. They're on a hot seat with Carly
Mm-hmm.
uh, Ursay Gordon. She's the new owner of the team. Her father unfortunately passed away, and she's very hands-on. So she's invested in this team, and she's got all eyes on it. If it doesn't work this season, is Steichen out? And what other coaches do we see on the hot seat going into the season?
Oh, that's a good question. Other coach, I'm obviously like you said. I think Steichen, like you said, if he don't get it done, then obviously there's going to be a change because they're going to say we gave you the pieces, you ain't get it done. We got to go somewhere else. So I definitely agree with you. I think Steichen could be on the hot seat. I think Zach Taylor in Cincinnati should be on the
That's a
hot
good
seat.
one.
I
Yeah.
mean, granted, I get Joe Burrow's been hurt, but look what the talent that you do have on offense. Like, there's no reason why this team shouldn't be doing what they need to be doing. Defensively, obviously, they add Brian Cook, so that should help. But I definitely think Zach Taylor should be on the hot seat. Outside of those two on the hot seat, I would also say, and I know this might be, I don't know, I don't want to say this be controversial, but Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay should be on the hot
That's
seat too a
yeah.
little bit. Like,
Yeah, that's Angel's guy, our usual producer. Angel, Bowles will get you so far, and then they just kind of collapse,
in
and
a
they
mediocre division at that. Like,
yes, they won a couple divisions last year. They kind of down the stretch they faltered. So yeah, I think he should be on the hot seat. And then I'll throw one at you. And Nate brings this guy up all the time. It's Aaron Glenn. He it's his
yeah,
second season. He's gotten rid of both coordinators. They had to mess at the quarterback position, and they're trying to clean some things up, with Woody Johnson, the owner there, and Darren Malgi, very active in free agency with re-signing Brees Hall on a franchise tag. Jelani Woods, tight end, they re-signed him. Kingsley Ngabare, they signed him. Joseph Osei coming over from the Bengals that you were just talking about. They traded for Vondre Sweat coming from the Titans. So and they traded for Minka Fitzpatrick today. It's crazy how Minka's just bounced around. I think he's
I
one of the best
know.
safeties out there. Just talking about the Jets and should Glenn be on the hot seat, and then you can talk a little about Minka and him landing there.
Should he be on the hot seat? I. It's hard to say just because the situation, but he kind he kind of put himself in that spot with the decisions that he made, with just how that team performed. And I think with him, making the wholesale changes that he's made, obviously on the coaching staffs, and him, I think he's going to be calling the plays this year on defense. Like, you're really putting yourself in the line of fire, because it can't be the defensive coordinator screwing up because he didn't do X, Y, and Z. Like, no, you're the guy that's going to be calling the shots on defense. And I think Frank Wright is coming in as your OC. So you bring in some more veteran minds, and maybe that turns into a couple more wins. I think for Jets fans, I think they just want to see a competitive team. Like, this team just looked out of sorts last year and just looked like, what are you doing? And it's crazy to think that, because there was moments during the season where you thought, like, maybe this team could do something, like week one against the Steelers. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn and has something with Justin Fields, and sadly everything went down the hill, went downhill
After
for
that dance.
everything. Yeah, the dance with Tampa Bay, everything went
Yeah.
went went downhill. But I like what they did in free agency so far. I like them getting a lot of veteran, pieces there. Like you said, trading for the Tavondre Sweat, the kind of reassuring form up that interior to defensive line there. Signing also Demario Davis
Yeah.
from the
Good one.
Saints, bringing him back to the Jets. That's a nice deal, getting some veteran leadership. Like you said, Minka Fitzpatrick, like you said, the dude is, like you said, he's so good, and for some reason, it seemed like it's like nobody's talks about him. I don't know. It's like when he once he got to Miami, it kind of was like out of sight, out of mind. But this dude is still a playmaker. So you solidify that. Like you mentioned, the pass rushers they got. I'm really excited about them getting Kingsley Enagbare from the Packers. 1 year, $10 million deal is a little pricey. I didn't think he was going to get 10 million. I thought that would be more suited for a guy like Al Quadin Muhammad from Detroit, who a lot of people kind of linked to the Jets because of him working with Glenn for in 2020 in 2024. And I think what Muhammad had like 11 and a half sacks. Like, that's the guy that you would think. But in the is 25 years old, didn't get a lot of sacks, but he gets pressure. Solid against the run. I really like that addition there. So the Jets have some pieces defensively that I think that could make them much better. And I think for Aaron Glenn's sake, that's really good. But for him to keep his job, he's got to figure out quarterback. He's got to figure that part out. And whoever he has at quarterback, you got to get whoever that is some weapons at wide receiver. Like, we can't run out the wide receiver core that you had last year. Like, once they didn't have Garrett Wilson, it was looking spooky. Like, it wasn't looking good.
Yeah, it wasn't, and we'll see how that team turns around, and they got the second overall pick. Everybody's saying it's going to be Arvell Reese, the edge from Ohio State, 6'4", 238, had 6.5 sacks last season. I mean, you put them in that defense, maybe he can turn around this defense like he did with the Lions, in terms of I know they struggle with injuries, but they had a unit at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and if you get all these pass rushers, because they still got Will McDonald the fourth,
Yep.
he's there, and you pair him with Arvell Reese, and you talked about Sweat coming over from Titans, they could build something defensively, but obviously that offense, it's all centric around the quarterback. I do like Taylor at the tight end position. He had a
Yeah,
pretty
me
good
too.
rookie season. He's good in the red zone. Is it going to be Justin Fields? I mean, are they going to? Is it going to be Fields and somebody else? Where they going? He's under a 2-year deal, so they still owe him. I think in a range. It was like a 2-year
Like
where he's
40
getting about,
million. It
yeah,
was like two
somewhere
year
around
40.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what's going on with Fields? I've always liked him coming out of Ohio State, but his accuracy is just it's not NFL worthy.
Yeah, I was a big Justin Fields person too, coming out of Ohio State, and I thought like things were going to start to turn around for him, especially when he got to Pittsburgh, and I was like, okay, he's showing a little bit of flash,
Yeah,
a little bit of glimpse. Then he got to New York, and I'm like, okay, he's getting that starting chance. Like, let's see if he can take off, and it just didn't happen. And I think the last thing I've seen about him and the Jets, like almost like the Jets will part ways with him eventually this off season. It's just a matter, of time. So if they do part ways with Justin Fields, like you said, where do they go next? Because the only other quarterback they have under contract, I think, is Brady Cook, who showed some flashes, undrafted guy out of Missouri, showed some flashes, but you're not going to roll into next
no, you
season
can't.
with
No, you
with
can't.
with Brady Cook. So do you go? I think people floated out there Geno Smith. I don't know if you want to go back down Geno Smith 2.0 for Geno's sake, not for Geno's sake, or do you go for a Jimmy Garoppolo, or do you go for a Kyler Murray? Like, do you entertain that idea of going after one of those guys to get you through the year to see okay, maybe these guys are the future, but if they're not, we set ourselves up for that strong quarterback class in 2027.
Yeah, and the Jets is going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. And as you said, they've invested a lot. Now Rich he kept saying to me, he said, "Well, Fields eventually he's going to get cut. Nobody's going to want him. He's going to end up in the UFL or CFL." I mean, I still think somebody's going to take a chance on him. He
Hmm.
can be a valuable backup. I mean, look what happened, and we could talk about free agency in terms of like Malik Willis, because he did not look when he had his
No.
opportunities with Tennessee, he did not look to be in the right place. And then he got with Green Bay, and LaFleur kind of remade him. He gets a 3-year
Hmm.
deal with the Miami Dolphins. Happily knows him. Their new general manager Sullivan knows him. They're both Green Bay guys.
Yep.
Malik Willis gets a 3-year, $67.5 million deal, 45 million guaranteed, 22 and a half signing bonus. I mean, he hit the jackpot for a guy that's got a limited amount of starts. Is this a good signing for the Dolphins? I mean, the Dolphins have been a wreck. They haven't won a playoff game in forever. Uh, what's going on with this signing, and where do you see this going for them?
Yeah, no. I think if you're like going back to Justin Fields real fast, I think that's the
Yeah,
trajectory you want to follow, the Malik Willis trajectory, which means you want to get in the pocket with the Packers, or with a Sean McVay, or a Kyle Shanahan. But obviously he has Mac Jones, like those type of guys that can kind of develop you and kind of get you on the right track. And I think for Malik Willis, I think like you said, he hit the jackpot, and I think and that's credit to not only himself but to that Green Bay coaching staff. Like they really took the time to develop him and put him in, the right position, for him to succeed. Like the Willis that we saw these last couple of years in Green Bay was look almost like the guy that we saw coming out of Liberty, where you're like, okay, I see the potential, I see the flashes, like, and that was credit to Green Bay. Like they simplified the offense, they put pieces around him, but they also played to his strengths, moving him out the pocket, RPOs, read options, like all those type of things to kind of get him comfortable. And he made the plays you know, when it counted the most. Now, in Miami, he won't have the fallback option of having, LaFleur and that offensive coaching staff. I think obviously he'll have Slowick, who's the OC there. I think in Miami, Bobby Slowick, who's the OC, he'll have him, who has some success with CJ Stroud. And we've seen Stroud kind of actually take a step back without Slowick. But I'm excited for Willis. I'm excited to see what he does because he actually has weapons in Miami. Like he actually has like some guys with him. Like he has Devon A-Chain to lean on. He has Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. He has Malik Washington for the Dolphins, who showed up a little bit. What do the Dolphins do at tight end? That's going to be very interesting. Offensive line, they got to make sure to shore those things up because you want to put Malik in some advantageous, situations. But I think a lot of people and a lot of eyes are going to be on him to see what he does because I think a lot of people, like you said, they remember the Justin Fields situation and how he hit the jackpot 2 years, 40 million. He's supposed to take off. I think everybody's going to be waiting to see, will Malik Willis take off or will he just be another guy who is like Matt Flynn? Like, the guys were
Yeah.
hot for 1 minute and then they fell back into obscurity. But I think the point that you highlighted earlier, having those Green Bay guys with him and Halfley and Sullivan, who've seen him the last 2 years and have worked with him and have gone against him, I think that's going to help him, in Miami. And not to say the Dolphins are going to be a playoff team, like they're far away from that. But I
Yeah.
think they'll be competitive enough.
Yeah, and in that division, let's face it, you got the Patriots. They had their bounce back.
Hmm.
Wanted to get your take on, are they going to be the same team? And then we'll talk about Nate's team, the Bills. Have they done enough? Have they positioned Josh Allen to finally get over the hump, win an AFC Championship game, and get to the Super Bowl? They got rid of Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane. They gave him the keys to the car fully. Uh, was that the right decision? So first, the Patriots. Vrabel, can he keep this thing going?
I think he can. I think he can. He have. I think he's built. I think what him and Elliot Wolf did last offseason kind of set the tone for this team. They built in the trenches on both sides of the ball and added playmakers around Drake May, and I think that's the same approach that they have to take this offseason. Just continue to build, continue to tweak. Like you don't got to make the huge splash move, the AJ Brown rumors are, still floating out there, and he would be great for them because they don't have Stephon Diggs. You add AJ Brown to that offense, everything now opens up for a Keyshawn Butte, a Kyle Williams, like a Mac Hollins, a Demario Douglas. It all opens up, for those guys. But I think for the Patriots, I think you can do what you did last year. Obviously, you won't. The issue is you won't sneak up on nobody. Last year, was able to sneak up on everybody. You had the fourth place schedule. You won't have that luxury, this time around. But you have the pieces to do that. You have the offensive line that, granted, did not play its best in the biggest moment in the Super Bowl, but that experience is going to help them. It's going to help a Will Campbell. It's going to help a Jarrett Wilson, who a lot of people suspect might move over to center now with Garrett Bradbury, being traded to the Chicago Bears. And you look at defensively, you have Barrymore, you have Milton Williams, obviously Harold Landry. You don't know what's going to happen with Caleb Chase on, but them getting Draymond Jones on that 3 year deal, I think that kind of solidifies that Chason is probably getting a bag somewhere else. So he's obviously going. But then you look at their back seven. You got Spillane, you know, who you mentioned
Gonzalez,
earlier,
that's a
Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones, Jalen Hawkins. Hopefully they can resign him. He was outstanding. You got the rookie Woodson as well back there. Like they're set
yeah.
to really do what they need to do. Is
And
just
they have Vrabel, so
yeah,
they got the
exactly.
defensive
The tone
mind
center,
there.
tone
They're
setter there.
they're bringing everybody back, and then their rivals, who they split last year, and they won the key games, and as you said, that schedule may have helped. But I want to take on the Bills. The Bills, DJ Moore, they make the big trade with the Chicago Bears. They bring him over 2026 fifth round pick, and they also did exchange with the second round picks. Is that enough? I know they made a couple other moves too. Have the Bills done enough to help Josh Allen? I know they brought back McGovern as well, 4 year, $52 million deal for him at the center position. Oh, to be a center. But talk a little bit about the Bills and are they going to finally get over the hump?
I mean, for a Bills fan, you hope that they can because I think everybody thought this was the year to do it. Lamar is not in the playoffs. Mahomes is not in the playoffs. Like this is your chance to like make this run, but they didn't do it because Josh Allen does Josh Allen things, having those innocuous turnovers, and that's something that he's going to have to curtail. It doesn't matter what pieces you have around him. Who do you put there, wide receiver and tight end? Like he cannot turn over the ball in certain and key situations. Like he cannot do that. Hopefully, he can curtail that. Obviously, he's going to have Joe Brady in his ear, who was his OC. Now, as the head coach, I think getting DJ Moore was a very sneaky addition to that team. He's not the big time, upper echelon, top 10 wide receiver one, but he's a nice mid tier wide receiver one. And I think having Joe Brady, who had him in Carolina, I think that's going to help them in that offense. You still got Khalil Shakir, right? So your slot guys there. I think the onus is going to be what can Joe Brady also do with Keon Coleman. I think this is going to be the time where can Keon Coleman shine because you just mentioned those names. You mentioned what they have at tight end, Dawson Knox and the other tight end
Kincaid.
that's
Yep.
yeah, Kincaid. Like you have James Cook in the backfield, like and like you mentioned, Connor McGovern, Deion Dawkins, all the pieces are there for him offensively to really do great things. Is just can you not make the crucial mistake in the biggest moments? And I think that stood out to me most about Josh Allen. Just this season alone, and even in previous season where he just makes the mistake that's just backbreaking, like the fumble against the Broncos in that playoff game, where it's
Yeah,
like,
right before halftime,
right,
that play killed them, and that was a free 3 points, and that
yep,
factored in huge in that game. But they do have a lot of talent, and they're putting some pieces around him. They got to get a pass rusher. Wanted to get your take on. Are they
yeah.
the team leaders in the clubhouse to get Trey Hendrickson? He's kind of sitting out there. What are you hearing in terms of Hendrickson? I heard the Niners, the Chargers, Cowboys, the Bills. Who's going to get it done for him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if you're the Bills, I mean, you hope that you can get him. I mean, you pair him opposite of Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver in the middle. I mean, you're cooking there. I mean, the Cowboys, who knows now because they do have Rashawn. They traded for Rashawn Gary from the Packers, who we thought was going to get cut, but he got traded. So they have Gary. So I don't know if the Cowboys are going to factor into that mix. I think Cowboys still get pass rusher, but probably not to that extension. The Chargers could be interesting given that they did not re-sign Owe and he got the obviously the 4 year $100 million deal from Washington. They did bring back Khalil Mack. So I think the Chargers could very well be frisky enough to say, hey, we saw what the Denver Broncos did last year in this division, getting 68 sacks with their front seven. Like we can do the same thing if we can get Trey Hendrickson. So I definitely think it's probably going to be, those teams with cap space and money. Like I said, uh,
Yeah,
the Chargers, and I think, like you said, the Niners. If you're the Niners, you obviously you getting Mike Evans like that was a message that you're here to compete. So you need another pass rusher opposite of Nick Bosa, who's coming off of another injury at that. Like you need another guy there. You get Hendrickson with Nick Bosa, Mike Evans. You can compete in the NFC West and get your crown back. So I think it's going to be very interesting. But I think if you're a Bills fan, you got to go for it. You got to push this because again, just like we said with Lamar Jackson, the window is starting to close. Like it's open, but it's not as wide
right.
open as it once was.
Yeah, definitely. And another team, everybody's saying, well, where you and I are in Philly area, they're trying to fantasy football and say, oh, how he can get it done and get Hendrickson. Is there any chance they can sign him? They didn't get Phillips. You said N'Kobe Dean already left. So, you know, what are the Eagles looking at in terms of free agency? Uh, I'll just run through some of these guys. Goddard, is he back with the Philadelphia Eagles?
If is he back? I could see. You know what? I could see him coming back just based on how this market's kind of flowing right now. I could see him coming back. I don't think the fact that Likely and I think Cade Otton both got re-signed and he hasn't got re-signed yet. I think we could see Goddard back.
All right. How about Reed Blankenship, their free safety? He's one of those second tier guys. Important in their scheme, but are they going to be able to bring him back? And if they do, will that prohibit them from because they got a lot of young guys coming up on the defensive side that need to get new contracts too.
Yeah, before we hopped on the air, Reed Blankenship signed with the Houston Texans on a
There it is.
3-year $24.75 million deal with the Texans. So damn, that's another hole that they'll have to figure
It's
out. So
interesting because yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles they're starting to get some holes in terms, and when you're a good team, you're going to have
mhm,
defections. I think in the end they may move Cooper DeJean back to safety.
I could
He
see
played
it.
some safety at Iowa. He'll be in the mix, but it's going to be interesting to see how they approach the draft and the offensive line. Uh, they got some holes to fill there. Jahan Dotson gone at receiver position. He left today via free agency. Biggest elephant in the room, though, A.J. Brown. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to be an Eagle or not come training camp?
I don't know, man. Like this is the most ongoing saga that I've ever seen. You would have swore the Philadelphia Eagles are the Dallas Cowboys the way that they're talking about the situation. Like every day there's a new report that's coming out that all sounds like the 10 other reports that was being talked about like 2 3 weeks ago. If I had to make a case for it, I could see him being back because again, like if no team is stepping up to the mat to give you what you want, why get rid of one of the best wide receivers in the league? Like in an offense where I think he could actually flourish, just looking at what Green Bay was able to do, these last couple seasons with everybody getting touches, everybody being utilized across the formation. Like if you're AJ Brown, why wouldn't you want to be in that type of situation? Like, could you imagine moving AJ Brown from the outside, but then having him in the slot sometimes on these short passes, like, and let him do things yards after the catch? Like, there's a lot of playmaking there. So if I had to think about it really hard, I think AJ Brown is still here just because also financially, like the debt money is just ridiculous to move him. And I think once DJ Moore got traded for a second round pick, I think that's solidified. Like, yeah, AJ Brown's not going anywhere for no less than a first and something else. And if no team is
Yeah,
willing to do that,
and I
why
don't
not?
think I don't. Everybody's saying the Patriots and Elliott Wolf and Vrabel, but I think in the end the price is going to be too high. And Howie Roseman knows what he has. He's not going to hand him away. They'll try to
No.
placate him. You have Manu coming in. The playbook will be more conducive to Brown and Jalen Hurts' strengths, and they're going to have to play off that. But man, Javon, this was quick. This is
I
a
know.
quick show. That's how you know a good one. It went really quick. Really appreciate you jumping on. I'm going to have you on again this all season because I know Kevin's not going to be here a couple times, and we'll start talking more teams, rosters, and how they're getting ready for the draft, and start mocking that. And even though we joked about 2027 and teams tanking, there are some good prospects in
Yeah.
2026. I didn't watch. I watched some of the combine. That's not my favorite thing, but there'll be a lot of guys for us to get excited about and talk about. And but I really appreciate you coming on here at Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Anything else before you jump out?
No, just appreciate you for having me on. Like you said, people can follow me on Twitter at Jovan10 and check out TotalSportsLive.com as well.
All right, good stuff from Javon Offer. We appreciate him. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Duncan, great job behind the glass, and we will talk to you down the road.